Well, hey there everyone, and welcome back to YouTube Foundry. I'm Richard, and what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take a deep dive into how YouTube enforces its policies and guidelines. This is an absolutely critical thing for you to understand, because if you violate those guidelines, you're going to get a warning, and if you don't fix the warning, you could get an actual, what they call a strike. 3 strikes, and they have the right to remove your channel, remove access to it. And if they remove access to that channel, any other channels on the same account, you will lose access to as well. So this is an absolutely critical thing to understand, because if you don't follow the rules just as they're laid out, you can lose not only access to your channel, but you can actually lose your means of generating income if you're generating income from that channel. So let's go take a deep dive into the enforcement practices at YouTube. Okay, so let's just jump into this. To get to the information on how YouTube does their strikes, you need to first go to support.google.com, as I've done here on the screen. We're going to click on the YouTube icon about in the middle of the screen, and it's going to take us to a screen about YouTube Help. And if you scroll down on that, we're going to go to the bottom where it says Policy, Safety, and Copyright. When we click on that, we're going to go down to Reporting and Enforcement. So when we get there, there's some things you need to learn about. And we're going to focus on this middle column. The first column is about reporting things that violate YouTube's policies and guidelines. So YouTube would really like you to actively monitor what you're watching, and if you see something that's inappropriate, they would like you to report it to them, and they provide all kinds of forms for doing that kind of reporting. That may be something you're comfortable with, it may be something you're not comfortable with. I'm not going to tell you that you have to do it or don't do it, but they do encourage you or provide you the opportunity to provide things. So for instance, if you start to type in a word and the autocorrect gives you some dirty word, they want to know about that because they want to fix it. They don't want that up there. They call that their flagger program. Or actually, they call it their YouTube search prediction complaint. Could be actual videos that violate the YouTube policies or guidelines. It could be a lot of things in there that are happening that you just see that you don't think is appropriate, and they want to encourage you to report it. I'm not going to worry that much about it. But let's talk about these enforcement activities. Now, YouTube uses the phrase of strikes and 3 strikes, and they can eliminate your channel. They can shut down your channel. Now, it's kind of a baseball metaphor, but it's really not accurate, because in baseball, if you get 3 strikes, you're out, but you get to come up to bat again, right? Let me tell you something. If you get 3 strikes and you're out at YouTube, you can lose your whole channel, and you can't just switch to another channel on the same account. It's any account that's associated with that channel also gets shut down. So you have to be really, really careful about what you do. So the first thing they do is they describe up here at the top, right in the middle, under Learn About Enforcement, says how YouTube reviews content. And we'll click on that, and one of the things it says is that, first of all, they have automated systems that will review the content that's in the videos. They watch the videos, the automated systems listen to what's said in the videos, and they will flag things. Now, sometimes the automation will give you an automatic warning. Usually what's going to happen, particularly if it's content related, they are not like a copyright. Like copyright flag, if it's copyrighted, it's copyrighted. You don't need a human to review that, right? But if it's something in the content, something you've said, a visual that's maybe inappropriate, it will flag it and send it to a human person to review, and that human will then review what's in that video, what's in that content, to determine whether or not it is appropriate or inappropriate for YouTube. Now, let's get past that. Let's go back and let's look at this next thing, Community Guidelines Strike Basics. This part you really have to get. You really have to understand. So first thing to understand that if you violate the community guideline, the first thing they're going to do the first time that happens, you're going to get what they call a warning, okay? Now, and there's what it says, a warning. We understand mistakes happen, and you don't mean to violate the policies. That's why the first violation is typically only a warning. To have this warning expire after 90 days, you can take an optional policy training. However, if your content violates the same policy within that 90-day window, the warning may not expire and your channel may get a strike. The warning could turn into a strike if you're not careful. So what exactly does it mean when it gives you a strike? Well, it's going to tell you, when they give you a strike, they're going to tell you what content. Well, first they'll tell you that you've got a strike. They're going to tell you what content was removed. They'll then tell you what policy it specifically violates, how it affects your channel, and what you are supposed to do next. So it'll tell you those 4 things. Those are really important. Now, there are some things we'll get to later that can get you wiped out on YouTube, even for one violation. And we'll talk about those things. There's all about 3 of them, but you got to really make sure and avoid those at all costs. So the first strike, as they said, they if it doesn't follow their policies, guidelines, you'll get a first strike. And on that first strike, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be sort of on probation for a week. You're going to be, grounded for a week. You can't upload videos or live streams. You can't start a scheduled live stream. You can't schedule a video to become public. You can't create a premiere. You can't add a trailer for an upcoming premiere. You can't create custom thumbnails or posts. You can't create, edit, or add collaborators to playlists. And you can't add or remove playlists from the watch page using the save button. So there's a lot of things you cannot do for a week. You can watch videos, but that's about all you can do for a week while you're on this probation where you're sort of grounded for a week. At that point, you have to acknowledge that you got that, and then your 1 week starts when you have acknowledged the violation. Not your probation doesn't start when you get the email. The probation starts when you acknowledge the email. So that's important. That's why you have to check your email every day, right? This thing, because if you don't check it once a month, this thing could be, you could be, locked up for a week, for a month, and then all of a sudden you realize it. Now, then you got to start your clock for your 90 days, right? So what you want to do is make sure and check your email daily. If you get a strike, you're going to have to respond and acknowledge it immediately so that 1 week grounding period can go and get over with, right? Now, after the 1 week period, all your privileges are restored. However, you're still on this 90-day window that if you get this same warning again in that 90 days, you could have that turn into a strike, and you don't really want a strike. So, but the strike does remain on your channel for 90 days, at which point the strike comes off and the clock restarts. Now, if you get a second strike within the same 90-day period, you will not be allowed to post content for 2 weeks. You get 2 weeks of grounding, okay? If there are no further issues after the 2 week period, all your rights are restored automatically, and each strike will not expire until 90 days. So you had the first strike, right? And that had a 90-day window on it. Then the second strike, well, that's got a 90-day window too. So even after the first one expires, you still may have some time left to serve your sentence, so to speak, for the second strike. If you get a third strike in a 90-day period, it could result in your channel being permanently removed from YouTube. Not always, but it could. Remember, there's always that possibility that it could meet the criteria that be allowed to stay. But generally, you could expect if you get a third strike in 90 days, you're pretty much in a lot of trouble. Now, when you get a strike, there's some things you need to do. You'll want to follow the community guidelines. You want to make sure and learn about those. That's why we covered those earlier. Understanding those community guidelines is really, really, really important. So you need to scan down that list, and if there's anything in those community guidelines that impacts your channel and the kind of content that you create, you need to be very, very familiar with that. They have the right to restrict a creator's ability to create content at their discretion. It says right there. You can see it. I've got an arrow pointed to it. Your channel could be turned off or restricted from using any YouTube features. So this is really important for you to make sure and follow these guidelines and understand exactly what happens. Now, what happens if you've got an account termination. So it talks down here about channel or account terminations. And what it says here is that if your channel is terminated, you will get an email explaining the reason for the termination. And if your channel is terminated, you are prohibited from circumventing, this is important, you're important from circumventing the termination by using or creating any other YouTube channels. You are also prohibited from letting others whose YouTube channels have terminated use your YouTube channel to bypass their termination. So let's say your best friend gets their channel terminated and they want to post videos. They can't post videos on your channel, or they can't create a channel on your account that would allow them to have access, thereby sort of circumventing the punishment. The punishment is for the individual who's posted the material, not for the channel. So if you've got a bunch of channels, they could all be gone. Now, see, in my case, I use the YouTube not only for my channels, my sort of hobby channels, my public channels, but I also used it for course content. So if I was to get one channel canceled, I'd be in a world of hurt because I got all those videos that now students would no longer have access to, and that could be a problem. Now, if you have repeated violations of the community guidelines across any form of content, they could just terminate your channel. So even if you expired your 90 days, if you keep having the same thing happen over and over again over the course of months or years, they might go ahead and cancel your channel. If you can, and it says repeated violations, things like posting abusive or hateful language and or harassing videos or comments. Those kind of things can get you in a lot of trouble quickly. A single case of severe abuse, which would be predatory behavior, spam, or pornography, can get you canceled like that. A dedication to a policy violation. In other words, you are just committed to doing hate speech, harassment, impersonation, pretending to be somebody else, and impersonating, making your content make it sound like somebody else. Like, for instance, if you were imitating the president's voice and you were saying a lot of terrible things using the president's voice, that can get you terminated like that. So you've got to be very careful and not violate these policies, because this could be the end of your channel and your end of your opportunity to use YouTube to generate income.